Welcome back. We've been covering your local elections in the Central Illinois area, and today is no different. We are your local election headquarters, and the race for election is coming up. And right now I'm joined with congressional candidate for the 17th District, Bill Fawell. Thank you so much for joining me and talking about the topics that are important to you as well today.
Thanks for having me, Eugene. I appreciate being back.
One of the big things that you have pushed within your campaign and your push is a change within the way government is operating. Can you kind of elaborate on that? Because you've really gone out and said that there's corruption, there's things that need to change.
Yeah, the problem in America today is, we've got all these problems that are dividing us. And they're, for the most part, really they're symptoms of systemic failure in our federal agency form of government, because we're no longer a representative government. Federal agencies today control all the lawmaking powers of Congress to the extent where they write 90% of our laws. It employs 10,000 lobbyists. It spends $3 billion a year writing the best laws billionaires' monies can buy. This is why the 5 richest counties in America surround Washington, D.C. And it's the method by which they steal from the poor, eviscerate the middle class, and give to the rich. It's a system that can't go on, and it's going to fail. And if you look at the markets today, you're seeing that failure occur right before our eyes. And that's why I'm running, and that's what I intend to correct. That's why I've led off with what I call liberty legislation. I picked out 3 pieces of legislation. Legislation that people support and has good broad-based support, not only in the people, but in the Congress. First is term limits. Everyone supports that. It's something that has to be done. Number 2 is what I call the REINS Act, or it's already passed the House 2 times. And it requires that any agency law that affects $100 billion worth of the economy has to go through the lawmaking procedures of the Congress. So this pushes the power out of these agencies back to the people, because when you consider that the Congress is the people's place in our government, well, if that Congress has no power, guess who else doesn't have any power? That's right, you and me. And so that's what we've got to change. Incidentally, the REINS Act has passed the House twice. And each time my opponent, Sherry Bustos, has voted against it. You can't figure out why, because it's instant health care reform, instant campaign reform. Then the last one is an audit of the Federal Reserve Bank.
Well, I want to ask you these questions too. A big part of so far within the campaign have been statements that you support conspiracy theories. Even within the Republican Party, the Illinois GOP had pulled away, and I know we were talking about your thoughts on that. I do want to read some, because you have a book, and a lot of these comments stem from a book that you wrote. And so I want to read a portion of that, and just, you can tell me yes or no. But
let me head you off right there right away, because this whole thing was put out by a guy named David Brock, who is Hillary Clinton's chief of propaganda in the 2016, and he says it's all in my book, New American Revolution. But if you go to my book, New American Revolution, on Amazon, and you go through it and you get the first 40 pages for free, an extensive table of contents, there's nothing in there about conspiracy theories.
Okay.
That's all. And what has happened, here's an example of how important it is to protect someone who is a protected political species in America. This is how far they'll go. And they'll spread that, and then you get some people that are in high places of power in the party. But when you consider, I had a reporter from Rockford ask me.
I want to.
Yeah.
I just want to give you a chance to say yes or no, because I'm sure you've heard the quote, so you can say yes or no that it's in there.
I haven't heard it. I just heard it's here and it's not.
So I'm going to read it, and then you can say if it's in there, because obviously you wrote the book. So it's about the September 11th attacks, right? Yeah. It says you can go to YouTube, punch in building number 7. Third building that went down with the Twin Towers on 9/11. Nothing hit the building, not a thing. It fell entirely upon its own. If it looks like a standard commercial implosion demolition, it's because that's exactly what it is. That was not, you're saying that was not in your book?
That's not in the book.
Okay.
They say, this is all in Bill Fawell's New American Revolution. Like I said, no one ever, this is why no reputable newspapers or television picked it up because I think they went to Amazon and looked at it and said, it's not here. And they know who David Brock is, and they know that the Media Matters is all financed by George Soros.
So you are saying, so CNN, because it was picked up by CNN, so you're discrediting CNN with that as well.
No, CNN discredits themselves. I don't have to do anything.
Okay. Well, I want to ask you too right now something that's really big right now, just within the election process. The situation, I don't know if you learned today that authorities believe that they found somebody in regards to the suspicious packages that have been sending around, and Congress and people who are within Congress and leaders have received these packages. You talk about that, the corruption or the things that are happening within our leadership right now, even within our entire society. There's a lot of back and forth, a lot of tension that's going on, and obviously this is one of those things that kind of exemplifies kind of what it looks like in America. What are your thoughts on these attacks that are happening?
These are all symptoms of the failure of our federal agency form of government. This is what happens when you centralize power, and it's what you can see it. What's happened just within the 17th district or any rural district? They've been taking people and money and material away from rural areas. And as you centralize money and you centralize power, you start centralizing people. And this is what divides. And you create false realities. And this is where, I say it time and time again, if you look, every problem in America, I can trace back to the fact that we are no longer a representative government. Here, George Washington laid it out for America in his farewell address to the nation on September 17th, 1796. He said, you cannot take a power of Congress to write a law and give it to a public or private agency, because this power will always end up in the hands of cunning, ambitious, and unprincipled men, and this is the customary weapon by which free governments are destroyed. And that's what's happened. And what I'm trying to do is share this with people, and as the whole thing comes apart, because it's made the nation bankrupt. And history calls a governmental bankruptcy a revolution, but it's still a bankruptcy. So we have two choices. One, liquidation, which I think is violent revolution. Two is a reorganization. And what I'm presenting is a reorganization. Let's go back. Let's take all the public agencies, EPA, Health and Human Services, Department of Education, let's push those back to the people, back to the states, where they already have these agencies already set up. It's an easy thing to do. That just leaves the Congress with its duties to cover, like the Securities Exchange Commission, the FDA, the FCC. I mean, what do 5 former lobbyists on the FCC have any business deciding the internet policy for 330 million people living in America? Where does the FDA get the authority to take 90% of our prescription drugs are generic? Why do they cost so much? Because the FDA hands out monopolies to different corporations. So you make this one, you make this one, you make that one. And that's why, look at 8% is what of the GDP is what the rest of the developed world spends on healthcare. And they arguably cover everyone, right, Eugene? In the United States, we spend 18%. And why? What is that 10%? That 10% is worth $2.1 trillion. That's how much we're overcharged here in America. Can you imagine what would happen in America if healthcare costs dropped in half tomorrow? Well, and that's what we're talking about.
Well, I'm telling we're running out of time but I appreciate you. Bill Fawell, running for 17th Congressional District here within the area.
Very glad to be here.
Thanks so much for coming and spend time, and best of luck to you in just a few weeks.
Appreciate it.
Absolutely.
All right.
All right, we'll be right back.